The speakers are Cem Sertoğlu from Young Turk Ventures, and also he's an investor in Grupanya. Imran Akram from Fidelity Growth Partners, and Wouter Gort from Atomica Ventures.
That's me.
Thank you all for joining us. So, I'm leaving, guys.
Nice to meet you. Walter. Hello.
Good to meet you.
Have a nice day.
Welcome to the panel. All right, so here we are for the second panel. So for those of you who just came in, my name is Wauters. I work for TechCrunch. I'll be moderating this panel about why Turkey is a hot internet market. So first of all, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your firm, and I would also like you to say if you've made any investments in Turkey yet. I mean, I know you have, but more specifically, you guys.
Yeah, I'm from Atomica. We're just new in the market. I'm responsible for opening an office in Turkey. I will start today, and also.
You're opening an office today.
Yeah, so this is the official opening.
There you go.
And I'm also looking at not only Turkish but also Middle Eastern market. So.
And I'm Imran Akram with Fidelity Growth Partners. We're a £100 million technology venture capital fund investing across Europe. We've yet to make an investment in a company here, but I've been campaigning for it for a while, and my wife is Turkish, so always good to be here.
Always a good introduction.
And I'm Cem Sertoğlu with Young Turk Ventures. I'm the founding partner, and we make internet investments in Turkey and a few other emerging markets. I have about 8 Turkish investments to date.
All right. So we'll start with you, actually. Why is Turkey a hot internet market?
Turkey is hot today right now primarily because it entered the radar of the internet world through a few landmark transactions that happened earlier this year.
Right.
I think not much has really changed in the Turkish market in that some of the facts speak for themselves. It's a huge, engaged online audience.
Yeah. We've heard from Mr. Reed from Comscore.
Of course, exactly. That becomes very obvious. Then when you look at the gap between engagement of the Turkish online population and the amount of commerce that takes place over it, there's an enormous gap when you compare it to other markets. So for an investor at least, or for a strategic player, it becomes fairly obvious that that gap is going to close, just like it has closed in many other industries. But why is it getting all the attention right now is, the Gitti eBay transaction is the first example of a Turkish local, born on the web company being acquired by a global strategic player for a significant sum of money, creating personal wealth for the founders, made a great story, and all of a sudden, many of the strategic players looked into Turkey. There's always been an exit question about Turkey, can we get out? It's obvious that you can get in, but can you get out?
But the same question gets asked in Europe, right? Are there enough European big companies to buy European startups?
Of course.
It's a topic that comes back every.
And in parallel, the gap that I spoke about between commercialization and the attention, especially on the consumer side, and Turkey with its population is probably more exciting as a consumer story than a B2B story. So all of a sudden, you start to see the companies that were putting across a high-quality offering began to see a very strong uptake by the users, by customers. So you had very high-growth companies like Marcafoni, like Grupanya, etc., that grew very, very fast, got to significant sort of revenue and profitability numbers that also draw the attention of players like Summit Partners who are looking for some larger numbers out there.
Actually, to jump in on that one, I think I agree with you on the consumer being an interesting play. And one of the things that really strikes you about Turkey is, I mean, if you look at the foundations of where we are now, it's probably 5-10 years ago when the economy was stabilizing, growth started coming through, that's really set why this is exciting now. And one of the appealing things is, okay, everything is happening on the internet, there's these purchases. People don't have established patterns. These are not people who've been buying offline. They're used to going to department stores all the time. The population is significantly skewed towards the younger end of the population, used to using the internet, spending a lot of time on video, and so e-commerce actually has been one of those things that's easy for people, right? They've come to this straight away. The first time they're buying a computer, the first time they're buying movies, it's immediately online. I think that's one of the things that really helps it stand out from some of the other markets across Europe.
All right. So Wouter, you said you're going to start making investments in Turkey. Atomica has invested in 40 companies now, something?
50, yeah.
50
So
companies.
maybe Atomica, I didn't introduce it a little bit.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, I forgot.
Go
So,
ahead, introduce the
Atomica-
firm. Promote the firm.
Yeah, no, a little bit. Atomica is a young firm, only started up 5 years ago by Nicholas Sandström, the founder of Skype. Of course, he's got a tremendous track record as an entrepreneur, selling Skype twice. That's, I think, quite interesting. So we started as a super angel fund. Now we have a proper fund 2 years ago. We've got 180 million under management. And we've got investments in companies like Angry Birds, you may be familiar with, or and Jawbone, who just did a 1.7 billion round with.
Four of my favorite companies: Audio,
Audio,
Rovio, Angry Birds,
Rovio.
yeah, Fun.
Last FM, I
That's
think it's quite nice. We sold
Nice
2 years ago.
investment. So what's the kind of investments that you're looking for when you come to Turkey?
So basically, we like
I'm
companies.
just trying to guide all the entrepreneurs to know what they have to tell you.
A few things. We like companies that work capital efficient. If you look at, that's an extreme example, but like Angry Birds, there are only 30 people working in the office. They have a run rate of 200 million and a gross margin of around 70-80%. So I think that's basically, we look for companies that don't need money. We look for companies that have enormous growth rate and don't need marketing and sales, using platforms like Facebook or app stores. And we look for companies that work extremely capital efficient.
Right. So how much do you invest on average?
We invest from 250,000 to 25 million.
All right. What about you?
From a couple of million euros up to about 20 million euros.
All right. And you only do early stage?
Early stage and sometimes late stage as well.
Okay. So have you seen any companies in Turkey that have the potential to really become a big, not just a European brand, but really a global brand?
I absolutely think so. First of all, this Turkish consumer experience gives local companies a relatively safe sandbox to play in and start honing their core offering to the consumer. And I think we are beginning to see Turkish companies that are providing, more technology companies that are providing the infrastructure to be able to connect with the large global audience. One of my investments groups is an example of that.
Right.
And on the other side, on more web-enabled services side, Turkey's regional influence is growing. So it's also allowing Turkish companies to sort of get more aggressive and more confident first in the region. And I think the companies that are able to make that jump successfully will then have a great platform to jump onto the global stage and start competing with the global companies.
All right. Imran, you've invested in a lot of companies in a lot of countries. What advice would you give Turkish entrepreneurs when they look for globalization?
So I might actually lead into that question with what are some of the reasons and hurdles I see for some of the Turkish businesses that we've looked at. And I think completely agree with you, sort of, population of around 80 million, up there in size terms more or less with Germany. So huge domestic market.
And almost half online, right? 35 million,
right.
Something?
Yeah, lots of people online, lots of growth at the moment. I think some of the challenges that I see, and some people have talked about it this morning, Hanzade was talking about the difficulty of getting senior talent into some of the new ventures they're talking about. I think, as you said, the capital for lots of these is not the problem. It's getting good people in there running it. And to Sina's point earlier as well, it's the ambition to go and say, look, actually, we're not just going to be a Turkish business. We're not just going to make enough money that we're comfortable and we don't have to worry. But actually, we want to go make a world-beating company.
Right.
And I think there's lots of businesses that we see. They get there, they've got some success, and then people come off the pedal. They've hit that point. They're easy. They start talking about taking.
And you see this all over Europe, right?
You see it all over Europe, and I think it's that actually in lots of cases differentiates things from Silicon Valley. Right? And it's just that aggression that says, okay, you know what, we're not going to sell to someone else when we make, when we hit a certain threshold. Actually, we want to be the best in the world, and there's a 10-year growth plan where people will hear my name, in Antarctica, and they'll know who we're talking about.
All right.
And I think that, that ambition, that aspiration for greatness is really what we're looking for.
right? In terms of a business model, because there's been a lot of talk about European startups, cloning successful US startups, which I think is a bullshit argument because I see a lot of companies. Well, I talk to a lot of startups for my job, obviously, but a lot of startups in the US are actually cloning startups in the US as well. So it's not an argument of Europe versus the US, in my opinion, at least. But when you look at investments and you see this company basically copy-pasting a successful or a proven business model elsewhere, do you encourage it? Or are you looking for real innovation, both in terms of technology and business model?
Yeah, I think investing is about information arbitrage. So you knowing more than somebody else. That's, I think, what is investing about. Not only if you go in any capital market, if you go short, if you go long, whatever. That's about. And if you do pattern recognition, basically if you invest, you try to seek for patterns that you understand and try to invest in. That's interesting if you know patterns, if you see patterns sooner than others. Like Union Square Partners did amazingly with Viral Loop, being part of Tumblr and Twitter. But you can also be stuck into patterns, and then everybody sees these patterns, and then there's an overbid. So to answer your question, I think if everybody knows these patterns, like flash sales, for us it's not interesting anymore.
Right.
Because there's no, I don't want to sound too theoretically, but there's no information arbitrage anymore. So everybody knows everything. And then it's more about, then money becomes a commodity, and then for us we can't get outside returns.
So you don't just look at the numbers?
What we do now, I will give you one example. We just invested in a company in Brazil. It's a...
Has this been disclosed yet? Otherwise I have to write it up in...
No, it can't disclose it, but this is... It was a company we never imagined this was a market. But it's growing with 60% a month, and it's highly profitable. And now we saw this pattern, and now we're going to search for the whole world to get... In Russia and Turkey, we're going to look for these kind of patterns because we think we're the first one to recognize this. So that's why we think our company is really about narrowing our focus and broadening our appeal. We have an office in Brazil and in China and in London and in Turkey, and we just invest in a small group of companies, but then really with a global scope.
All right.
So I hear you on the patterns, and that actually it's easier when you see things like that. But I think, for example, the first person who said I'm going to make shoes, there's something to that. But the fact that 20 other people say they're going to do it, I think there's still lots in the execution as well. So for example, private sales is obviously the latest little boom. There's lots of them all over the place. But I think the logistics, the marketing, the execution, lots of that, I think. So when we look at it, we're looking to see what's different. So we don't want someone coming in saying, I want to do this because everybody else is doing this. But if someone says, look, here's a great idea, that sounds like something that can work, and you know what, we can do it better. We've got this twist, we know this local market, we can squeeze more out of it. I think that ambition is exciting and backable. It's the ones where someone says, okay, we're doing it just because everyone else is doing it, and we want to raise lots of money now and ideally sell this and get out of it in 6 months' time. That's when alarm bells start going off. Right. That somebody doesn't really want to build something.
It's a red flag. So, specific question for Turkey. Turkish entrepreneurs, if I would ask 50 Turkish startups, what's your biggest problem? What do you think they would say?
I think they would say talent.
Finding good talent. Meaning management talent or engineering or development?
At all levels, all types. It's been...
And do you think it's a problem of education? Does it start at school? Or?
No, it's the culture that doesn't really let the best and the brightest think about entrepreneurship or working at a startup, even if they're not founding it, as a viable, attractive career path. And I think one of the sort of
is that a cultural
points,
thing, or is?
I think it's cultural. I think it's very empirical. Basically, I don't think people can look around and find lots of role models. And I think one of the most important tipping points in the Turkish market, Turkish internet market, has been that there are now these role models that are appearing. There are people who are going and becoming entrepreneurs, creating high-impact companies, and then exiting them or growing them to a certain scale that they've done both financially and from a fulfillment perspective much better than they probably would have done at a corporate job or academia.
What about access to capital? local?
Access to capital, I think, is getting much easier. It used to be a much bigger bottleneck, but I think today in Istanbul, a good company has its pick of investors, and a mediocre company can still find money just because there's so much attention being paid to the market right now.
So guys, it's time to start making investments. You're already too late.
I must say, I would love to be here 1 year earlier.
There you go. That's actually, and the post that I wrote that Arda referenced, it's really true. I've heard investors say like, the next big internet market is Turkey, but please don't tell anyone because otherwise all the investors are going to start flocking here, and that's what's happening now. It is
I think, as you say, that the problem is not knowing that the market is growing and that there's something happening. It's going and building relationships and finding the good people. And I think, to your point, there's some that's the same startups all around the world. When you go tell your mom, I've graduated, I finished high school, and I'm going to make a startup. Sounds a lot to a mother's ears like you're unemployed. Right? I think that's still something that happens all around the world. And I think in other markets, it's more established, I think, for you to be able to pull out good people who've spent 10, 20 years doing marketing, logistics, finance in a corporation, and they know what a billion-dollar company looks like, what the processes are, how you think about it, and to get those people into an earlier stage business. And I think that's still not quite in the culture. But it's starting to be there, and it's starting to get to the point where, if you've got a choice between working at some big company in London or San Francisco or New York, or you could come back to Istanbul where, the lifestyle is better, there's this excitement, I think it's starting to get more attractive, and you see people going away, doing their MBAs, working elsewhere, and now coming back and saying, look, there's an exciting opportunity here. I think that's the really exciting thing that will help with the talent problem.
Absolutely.
What about companies that want to, international companies that want to establish a presence in Turkey? I mean, I know you're an investor, but what do you think their main challenge would be? Is it a cultural thing?
Of course, I think culture is important in every
Language,
local market.
obviously.
However, I think Turkey is significant. Turkey is large. So we've seen examples of sort of global companies come to Turkey and just presume that they can power through this market with ad spending, etc. That's great for ad companies, but I think the landscape is littered with the corpses of those attempts. I think Turkey should be treated as its own market with its own strategy, and high-quality talent, even on the sort of the large global companies' perspective, needs to be focused on the local market. I think if you're just trying to wing it, I don't think it works.
Well, you see it all over Europe, and that's one of my pet peeves when a US company starts an office in London, and then they go, we've established a presence in Europe. It's not true, you've established a presence in London and the UK maybe, but then, there's 58 more countries.
Right.
So, Wouter, when do you think you'll make your first investment in Turkey? It's going to be this year?
I want to do it, but to be honest, we're here for the long run. So
Right.
I think my role is to set up the infrastructure for the next 5 to 7 years, and we're eager, but we're not overreacting. So we'll take our time.
All right.
I think what's going to be interesting is, obviously the global economy is taking all sorts of hits, and you can have your questions about macro policy in Turkey, but kind of, as I say, yaydan çıktı, right? The shot has been fired, let's see, right? The goal is power through and hope it doesn't hit. But I think that the real test is going to be, in a few times, it's not going to be this easy all the time, right? There's going to be bubbles, there's going to be times when it's harder, there's going to be times when everyone, packs up and goes home, and actually, I think in those tough times is often when you get the really interesting companies built. Because those are the points when the people who really want to build something valuable, something long-term, who really care about doing this, keep doing it. Rather than all the guys who say, I'm going to take the money now and be out of this in a year.
All right. So, have you had any exits yet?
I've been involved in a few exits. Gitti Gidiyor, which was an investment that I led with iLab, is a great exit.
But this was a domestic exit.
It was
a Turkish company buying a Turkish startup.
It was eBay buying Gitti Gidiyor.
All right.
So
All right, so they first bought 10% and then they bought like
Correct.
the majority of the shares, right? Are you still invested in it?
I'm sorry?
Are you still invested in the company?
In the company? No, I'm not.
All right, but iLab is, right?
iLab is.
Which is something I picked up at dinner last night. So.
But I do want to add something about the sort of this hot market phenomenon that we're seeing right now. It also really increases the level of noise in the marketplace, and it, I think, becomes more challenging to sort of sift through, the pretenders and the guys that are just doing this because it's hot. I think a lot of opportunistic attempts also appear when attention levels go up in a market like this. So I think it's also, I don't think it's an easy thing to be able to operate in a hot market. I think the antenna need to be sort of more attuned.
Yeah, I would also like to encourage more Turkish startups to reach out to not just TechCrunch, but obviously international media. If you have a good story to tell, please share it with the world, because it happens, very rarely, and it's a shame, really. So yeah, all right, guys, we're gonna have to wrap up. Do you have any last thoughts that you want to share?
I think there wouldn't be this many people here in the room, and this many people, got on planes to come over here from the rest of Turkey, the rest of the world, if it wasn't exciting and hot. And I think, from my side, and I'm sure you guys would echo this, I think it's really, don't get carried away just in the hype to build something that is a bubble, right? I think actually this is something where you should be trying to build big, exciting, long-term businesses. And there's lots of people out there who would back that. And I think that, that's exactly what we're trying to look for.
All right. How many entrepreneurs are in the room? Can you raise your hands? How many investors are in the room? So there you go. Meet up with each other, get some coffee. Nice. All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks. Let's talk later.
Catch up later.
Thank you. Thank you.